This episode, I'm speaking with Christophe. He's originally from Detroit, where he got into a rock and roll band, started touring Europe, and then made a pivot to move to LA and pursue a career in acting. You've seen him in Twin Peaks and Jimmy Kimmel Live, to name a few. Also hosts a podcast called I'm Kind of a Big Deal, where he talks about what life is like growing up and pursuing acting as a little person. I loved hearing stories about his life, and if you're interested in music, career development, or personal development, this is a great podcast for you too. So, let's get into it. I was blown away by how many zigs and zags your resume has and how many hobbies. Just your whole life story is so compelling.
I just try to keep everybody guessing, I guess, at some point, including myself.
Seriously, I wonder, was there a lot of music exposure growing up in Michigan? Is there a big music scene that pushed you into getting involved?
Yeah, absolutely. Michigan and Detroit specifically has such a rich music history. Yeah, I don't know. I got into music just because I loved punk rock. I loved going to see Bad Religion and NoFX and all these punk bands that, I thought were just magical, or I couldn't describe them. And then of course, with my personality, I'm like, I want to try and do that too. So I just bought a drum kit, and then I would just practice every day and got into bands. And I loved it so much. I felt like it was something that I could kind of take control and ownership over, and I could, I saw myself getting better if I put time into it. It was this investment in myself and an investment in my creativity. And that just kind of grew into other things. And then once, I got tapped into first of all, I was kind of tapped into the jazz scene in Detroit. I was not a jazz drummer, but I would go to watch jazz and I would go and try and sit in. I was not good. And then I would also go and sit in on blues and other rock nights just to kind of get some chops up and get some experience, because I realized maybe at a young age that it was really important to play with as many different people as I can and get experience from as many different people and musicians and people that just had other experiences. And I really felt that was valuable, because, in Detroit, I mean, you have dudes who play in Motown bands, and then they'll go play at an open mic night at a blues bar on a Wednesday night. And you're like, these guys are playing arenas or they've played on records that I love, that the people love across the West, and you can just kind of go and jam with them if you're lucky, and you just show up, every single night. Detroit is really, really rich on that spectrum, the jazz, blues, rock thing. And then once I got into the indie rock scene, those bands were incredible too. I mean, the White Stripes, the Von Bondies, there were so many amazing bands that came out of Detroit, kind of before my band got started. So yeah.
Is there an element of getting into music and meeting other band members? I don't want to project too much of people I know into music, but they, excuse the pun, march to their own drums. They're kind of iconoclastic, out there people. Did it feel was it nice for you to find people who don't fit into a specific set? They're not cut and dry people. You wouldn't find them they wouldn't fit in an accounting.
Well, no, absolutely, man. I that right there is the thing that even to this day, I have to keep reminding myself. I'm like, people make art, and art is hard.
Yeah.
It's just hard. And I mean, I think that's the same way with athletics too. Surfing or rock climbing. If you want to do your thing, you can't think, I should be maybe having a safety net of a corporate job or something. You're not going to put yourself in the best scenario to succeed. You kind of have to be starved and poor and scrappy and learn that about yourself and how that works for you. So yeah, and I think if you see other people do that, and they're up there putting their heart out, and they're poor and they're trying to do their thing, it does have a reciprocal effect. I seeing that and understanding that you're not the only one who loves it and thinks it sucks at the same time.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Could you talk to me about, I was You had 3 major surgeries, is that right, before you turned 18?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think like you're kind of, addressing like the misfit part of trying to fit in with a group. Like I've always felt like I was a misfit, even among my own people, the little people, because even just starting out, dwarfism is such a mixed bag that when I would go to see my specialist doctor in Baltimore, no other of his patients looked like me, or they didn't. No one looked like each other. It
Yeah.
was such a unique and personal, and our issues and our complications were so singular to ourselves. Yeah, so I really felt that kind of like misfit, not belonging from day
Yeah,
one,
no, totally.
almost year one, like I and the surgeries. And at 6, at 6, we had already seen my doctor for 4 years, and he had planned this operation at 6. And I'll tell you, you don't know any other way when you go through it, right? It's like
Mm,
you don't have option A and option B to live your life. You're only on the same path that you choose, and that's it. And so I didn't know anything else, and that's how my life just was. But I will say that I think I grew up a lot faster as a 6-year-old who had to go
yeah,
do annual and biannual medical appointments and get measured, and have x-rays, and be criticized, like in a good way, in a healthy way, for what my future would be like. And that also happened again at 16 and 17. Like, stuff is serious when you have to have bones cut and spliced and
yeah,
nailed and pinned and screwed and hooked and all those things. It's like that, it is a life or death thing. And I'm so fortunate, you know um so grateful that I am able to, everything went well for me. All
yeah,
of my surgeries went well. I've never taken back pain medication, which I think I'm in a small percentage of people who have a full spinal fusion who don't take back pain meds. um Kind of,
yeah,
sometimes I feel like I'm living on borrowed time over here. It's kind of incredible.
yeah. Hearing you describe your surgeries, it feels more it feels more like woodworking. You're like, they sawed
Yeah.
this off, plucked that over there, put this over here.
No, honestly, and I think that's, with woodworking too. It blows my mind. Like the doctor that I had was Dr. Kopitz, and he, when you do a surgery, he passed away when I was 18, and I'm so grateful that I knocked out everything that I had to do while he was still able. And people at the funeral were talking about how when you perform a surgery, it's planned moment
Mm,
to moment. The whole thing is planned. And, Dr. Kopitz would do that as well. But if he got in there and he saw something that he couldn't necessarily see on an x-ray, or that he felt he had to pivot, you pivoted. And it's pretty remarkable that, it wasn't that he could just do that and say, this is what we need to do. I see something else. This is what we need to do now.
yeah, yeah. Part of the reason I'm so like impressed with your background and your hobbies and all your interests, because in some ways it's, I would imagine if you had all these major surgeries by your 18, you have dwarfism. Is there a part of you that's like reluctant to try anything? Like you can almost resign to like a life where you aren't trying these new things. Is that come up?
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess
Or have
so.
you always been someone who's like, I'm just gonna keep pushing, pushing, pushing?
Yeah, I think I've always just kind of, you got to push, like I think that's how. I was talking with someone recently. I think my parents brought this upon themselves because they they traveled me really early on. Like I think when I was 30, or at some point, I don't know when, I think both of my parents wanted me to have, more of a stable, secure financial job situation. And I'm like, well, guys, I mean, you were the ones that were traveling me at 2 and taking me to experience all these new things. So you showed me the world, and now I realize that I just have to go for it. So
Yeah,
this is, as much as you're disappointed, this is all on you. But yeah, I remember moments where, after my back surgery, that could have been it. That could have been just like,
Yeah.
well, maybe it's a life at home. Maybe it's a life of maybe I have to rest in a bed for 4 hours every day. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, who knows what someone needs in a situation, but yeah, I kind of like to test the waters, and I like to see how can I recover, and how can I how can I try to do the stuff that I want to do. And now it's kind of gotten to a point where I'm like, I think I just owe it to myself to do that. Like, we've gone so far, and we've done as much as we've done. So like, anytime it's like, yeah, I want to see if I can. I just surfed at the Waco wave pool in Texas a couple
Nice.
weeks ago, and like, I've never surfed in a wave pool, and I want to try it out. And I don't know if I can do it, but I did it, and it was cool. And I was sore after that. That was like that was somewhat extreme, but it was really fun, and I did it, and I would do it again. I think that's what it's all about. I regret, I think, is regret's a part of life, but also regret that if it's because you didn't want to try something. I don't like that for myself. I want to go and try and experience whatever I can.
Yeah, it's so clear for anyone who follows you or seen your work or listened to your podcast. You have this huge thirst for life, and it's fun to watch through you.
Oh,
And
thanks so much, man.
I'd love to hear, could you talk to me about how you were introduced to a band where you went on a European tour?
Yeah, so I mean, the band in Detroit, the Hard Lessons, I've always kind of been like an old man boomer at heart, I think, in like some of the ways I do things. And I had a business card made when I was 22 that just said drummer on it, and I would hand it out to people.
Yes, that's
And
awesome.
we would always joke around, like, that's how I got connected with this band. I ran into some folks that I had known like years ago, and I just handed them a business card that said drummer on it, and they called me, and the band started. And it's I'm all for that stuff. I'm all for just hunkering down and like putting the nose to the grindstone and see what you can create. And that's what we did. And the folks that I were with, they were really strong-willed and hardworking people, and they had established a bit of a connection in the Detroit music scene. So we kind of started and had a built-in audience, but it was still really hard. I mean, we spent 60, 70 hours a week on the band, whether it was rehearsing, booking shows, doing management stuff, recording, doing promotion. We did everything ourselves. And it was, I mean, I would, there were times when I would, we'd have a new album, a new record to promote, and I would show up to the post office in Rochester, Michigan at 1 a.m. and I would bring a radio, and I'd bring like 300 things that I needed to ship for promotion. And I would work from 1 a.m. until 7 a.m. because I didn't want other people to be waiting for me, and I didn't want to wait for other people to use the automated kiosk at the post office. So if I went from 1 to 7 in the morning, no one else was there, and I could ship 300 packages in those 6 hours.
Oh my gosh.
You just do it, man. Like we didn't have any money. The one thing that I've learned is how to be extremely poor, and and how to make stuff work when you're extremely poor. And I think that's a solid asset, because if you there's a question that folks have asked me, like, what would you sacrifice to get what you want? And like, would you eat food that cost $5 a day, or
Yeah.
would you would you live in a place that, you had to share with 5 other people, or you had to share a bedroom with? So like, what are the opportunity costs that you are willing to incur in order to actually, and how long can you do that? Like, would you do that for a month, or would you do that for 5 years? And those are the things that you really like, what's more important. And so I always thought that doing this stuff was more important. And that's how we got to Europe. It's really just the hard work, the persistence, no just kind of means not right now, but let's get back to it, and let's keep doing what we can do.
You're really breaking my fantasy of being a rock star. It sounds like way more work than I wanted it to
Oh my
be.
God. Yo, bands are the hardest thing ever. I think when I was on the road, I was thinking, God, comedians have it so hard. But I don't know. I feel like bands might be the hardest thing to do. I could you could prove me wrong. I'm willing to be proven wrong, but bands are so hard.
Yeah, just I literally had never considered any of the things you just talked about going behind the scenes. I mean, my experience with music is just as a listener. So you
And
show up
and
to a
that's
concert, you enjoy it, you go home.
no, and that's just me. Like I was in a band with two other people. They pulled their weight too, like everybody did stuff. You have to, because it doesn't get done otherwise, and I think there's also an ethic in Detroit, a work ethic that Detroit doesn't really tolerate folks who say like, "Oh, it never happened for us. It never." They're all. I think Detroiters. I mean, Motown. They're gonna, excuse the pun, look under the hood and be like, "Did you guys actually work hard, or did you just kind of, think it should happen because you tried
Right.
once?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in Detroit, I think Detroiters are really proud, and they're tough. They're tough cookies, man. Like it's a hard working town.
Anyone who can survive those winters.
Bro,
I
oh
mean,
my God.
that's so
I
crazy,
can't
man.
anymore. I can't. I blame the surgeries. That's what I will blame the surgeries on. I can't do the winters in Detroit anymore.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you got to go up there for probably Christmas and Thanksgiving, though, right?
Yeah, I'm going for Christmas, and I haven't looked at the weather, and I'm not going to.
Can
I
you share maybe your most crazy PG-13 story from your European tour?
From the European tour. Well, PG-13 story. I mean, it was all such a whirlwind. We
First of all, it
our
doesn't even sound like you had time to get into shenanigans if you're working 70
no,
hours a week.
well, honestly, we were the ones that had the most time because we were opening for OK Go and Motion City Soundtrack on the tour. So, and this was at the time when OK Go, I think they had already done their,
Is this post treadmill?
I think this was right when the treadmill came out because they did the backyard dance
Yeah.
video and then they did the treadmill. And I mean, you think we worked hard. OK Go, I think they told us they had 21 flights in 14 days.
Gosh. Yeah.
21, and at the venue, it wasn't their manager or their team responding to emails. It was the band.
That's
They
wild.
they were on their computers like doing business. And I mean, they're both of those bands, in my opinion, are huge inspirations, but it was at that time it was pretty incredible, and it was what a learning experience, man. Again, like OK Go isn't like smoking cigars in their, fancy hotel rooms at that
Yeah.
on that tour. They were up, tired, drinking coffee and doing emails.
So when do you get to do rock star stuff?
I think maybe in the videos, maybe like when you're, but I think that's, but even then it's like, I mean, especially when you think about OK Go as well, they funded and produced so many, they became a production company. Like
Yeah.
they were so smart and the guys in Motion City too. I mean, those guys, they're video producers, they're
Yeah.
music producers. Like the rock star stuff, I don't know, man. Like I think you got to time travel back to the 80s and go to the Sunset Strip and go to the Rainbow Room and meet Lemmy and Slash. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
That wasn't your experience. That is what I'm getting.
it's not the case, man. It really isn't. Like if
Yeah.
you don't show up, I mean, there've been stories where we like had to fight for our $50 at a bar in like El Paso or something like that, like, or San Antonio, like it, and nobody showed. Yeah. So I don't know. What's like the
I'm
sexiest
getting
PG?
more like 1920s New York dockyard worker.
I know. It's so crazy. Yeah. Like we have like grease on our faces
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah, I think it was just, I was in a band with two teachers who graduated with English degrees. So we were pretty tame. Like the other bands could get into stuff.
Yeah.
We had time during the day in Europe because we didn't have as much business to handle and we didn't have to do sound check really. So we would like go to museums and go to restaurants and just hang out, which was super nice. It was like, we saw the cathedral in Cologne and it was beautiful.
That's awesome. Do you
Yeah.
have like go-to frugality tips for surviving Europe?
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, if you're on tour and you're supporting another band, steal their water and eat their deli tray. That's how you keep your money. Yeah. And don't go to the red light district too frequently.
Yeah, that's how you lose your money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, those OK Go guys, they might have been, I'm trying to think, were they pretty much the first band to figure out virality, or
it kind of seems like
YouTube
it, right?
Can leverage? Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's like different levels at different times. But yeah, I mean, that backyard video and then doing the treadmills, that blew that. But it's still, yeah, that's a really good point. I think you're probably right. Yeah.
How did you think about mentally the transition between focusing on music to entertainment?
Well, it was time for me to leave the band, and I wanted to move to California because because of the weather, no winters like in Michigan, and I felt like I definitely wanted to surf, and I came to California to keep doing music and to keep doing that, but it was financial in a sense because I could kind of get paid to I didn't have to learn 40 songs in order to, get paid. I could just show up and wear something silly and they'd be like, all right, here's $250.
Yeah.
And so it was ease of income was a big part of it. And if you want to be in LA, you have to survive in LA. I didn't get much music stuff. I went on auditions. I don't think I looked the part. I think I probably seemed like a liability more than an asset, even though, man, auditioning was like nerve-wracking on drums. I really did not like that at all. And I don't think I was good at it. And even when I was good at it, somebody else who had better fitting rock and roll clothes would get the part, LA has a lot of image, especially back then. I mean, and now it does too. And I don't really have the duds to like compete with what other people can buy at Hot Topic and other things like that. But I also really I kind of fell in love with the collaboration and the creativity on a film of like how things came together. Because I mean, the stuff that I worked on early on, it was, my first project was a pilot and I worked with like 12 other little people. And that was, it didn't really thrill me all that much. But then when I got hired to be a stand-in on Paul, I was a stand-in for a CGI alien on this Simon Pegg, Nick Frost film. That was incredible because I was on set. I was treated like a better than, on set because I came from California to New Mexico for 3 months. And I got to interact with all of the departments. I got to see what everyone did. I had no idea if I was the greenest green you can possibly imagine going onto, a multi-million-dollar film set with stars in my face all the time. But I loved, and stars never appealed to me. I was never starstruck really at any time, even kind of in music. But
why do you think that was?
I mean, I think it's because of the dwarfism, honestly. I think it was like, I never wanted attention so much. I was always kind of avoiding attention and I never knew how to handle it. And I never knew how to, really kind of figure it out for myself. And so I think I just never really gave other things that much attention. I just kind of was like more cool, calm, and collected than ever. And I know other little people that weren't that way. They were like, give me the celebrity. I love this actor. I want to, meet. They're my celebrity crush or whatever. And I was like,
sure, yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, they're just a person.
They're just a person. Yeah. But no, it was survival. It was financial, most of it, because and then I just kind of fell in love with the process. And I also, you've brought up a couple of times how I've really not done anything twice, or everything kind of seems to be different. And I felt like that was the case on films. Nothing that I've done, that's really the constant in film, is like every role is different, every production is different, the ways that you have to solve the problems on films is different, and I love that. I thought that was great, and I saw more of the repetition in music, even though I love music and I love to play music. Playing the same song every night for 2 months on a tour, I felt like I was going to get tired of that, you know.
Sure.
And the film stuff, yeah, it kind of started to draw me in.
Yeah. Do you now that you have more time and like connections, was that New Mexico film set a typical experience, or did you get lucky with an environment that allowed you to peek behind the curtain in different departments?
I think I got lucky for sure. I mean, many people who had worked on more films than I they said that that was a special one. And you know, apparently, what was told to me is that it really trickles down from the top. And Simon Pegg and Nick Frost were the writers and the stars in the film, and you know, and the producer and Greg, the director, like everyone was just so nice. It was really really great for me, and other folks that I met, lifelong friends on that show who worked, that was their first film experience as well. They're like, I'll never work on another film again. If I don't want to
Wow,
deal,
yeah.
this one was so great, I don't want to deal with one that was bad, because like it's hard. Even though it's great, it's hard. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours. If you're an assistant, if you're a PA, if you're an AD, it's still gets grueling. You have to get the stuff that you owe, and if you don't get those shots, it's more time and it's more budget, and that's stressful, and you know it's tough. But yeah, that one, I think it was lucky, honestly.
Yeah, I'm always amazed when any movie comes out. I'm just thinking like anyone who's had to do a group project in high school, like think how hard it is to do a PowerPoint together. I can't imagine making a whole movie together. You know, all
Yeah,
those personalities, all that money, all the steps involved. I don't know how anything gets done.
I didn't either. I honestly, I thought it was dumb magic, you know, that like, oh yeah, let's think about it and we'll put a camera up and shoot some stuff, and you know, it's on TV so nobody can tell the difference. It's like, no, it is it's more involved than that, people. It takes more than that.
Do you call your parents pretty quickly once you get that gig to say like this is kind of the Hollywood dream?
Um,
Not Hollywood dream per se, but this is really cool. I'm with some A-list stars.
yeah, I did. Definitely did more early on. Both of my parents were kind of oblivious to pop culture, so telling them about Twin Peaks, telling them about Jimmy Kimmel, telling
Yeah,
them about, you know, they don't know who Simon Pegg and Nick Frost are, and so I would call them and I would say, I landed something good. I got something big. I can pay my bills, you
right.
know, and it's
Yeah,
going to be fun. And I mean, the first one, the very first one, the pilot, they're like, what's a pilot? I don't know. They're going to pay you, right? We
yeah.
just
Were
want you
you
to
in
survive.
Southwest now? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, right, exactly. Yeah, add that to the list. And so the second like decent job that I got was, and this was right before I got Paul, was I played drums on the Ellen DeGeneres show with a 9-year-old prodigy Japanese guitarist. And that one was like, everybody at home can turn on the TV and see Christophe, you
Yep.
know, and that, I think that was a moment for sure for the parents, because like stand-in on a film, so we can't see you, or we can you know, that's
Right.
stand-in's a little
It's a
bit.
little more opaque than
Exactly,
you
yes,
right here.
great word for it, definitely 100%. But Christoph's playing drums on Ellen, we know how to turn on our TVs, we'll see it for sure. Yeah.
I can't think of two more competitive fields than like music and acting. It's so like the odds of getting any sort of paycheck on either of those is incredible.
Yeah.
And then I wonder too, like when in acting you get even more niche and say, okay, we're looking for, can they even say that? Like we're looking for a little person for this role.
Bro, I
Like how
mean,
does that work?
5 years ago I was responding to like looking for 2 midgets for our show.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, yeah, stuff. I don't see midget anymore on
Yeah.
there, which is, you know, thank you for the progress. But yeah, I mean, I still see. I'm getting text messages. I've stuff has changed a lot for me in the last 4 or 5 years. I've turned down a lot of money because I just don't want to do the stuff that I used to do, and it's not good for me. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
other folks can do it, and there are times that I wish that these jobs wouldn't even be offered to anyone. But yeah, it's no, they post stuff is out there, man, for sure. I've seen some. I remember. Wow, I haven't thought about this in a very long time, but yeah, I remember because that's how I got stuff. That's how I booked myself on the Ellen DeGeneres show, was on Craigslist. I would just refresh Craigslist every 10 minutes and respond to stuff, And I remember this was 2009 when I got here, looking to a Craigslist post, looking to hire 2 midgets to run around in the backyard so we can shoot paintballs at them. This is not an offensive post.
How's that not? That's disgusting. Oh, sorry to hear that.
But that's I mean, that's kind of, that's one of the things that I'm like, oh yeah, okay, well, we got to try and change stuff.
Is stuff like that part of the catalyst for starting your podcast? Kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I haven't thought about that post in a long time. It's kind of funny that just came up right now, but
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a brick in that wall. There've just been so many instances and times when I myself, or I even see other folks that I know and care about playing roles that I know they don't serve anyone or anything, and they really set us back. So yeah, that was a cat. I didn't realize it at the start of I didn't have enough forward thought to think that that's what I wanted to do in starting a podcast. My friend Jenny
Sure.
was the one who really, and she said, "Oh, you should start it because you have so many crazy jobs and your life is interesting, so you should talk about your life."
Yeah.
And
I
then
agree.
it morphed into that, because after, I mean, I do credit Jenny for that. And after we had our conversation and I, drove home and thought about it, and, I realized, oh yeah, like this isn't about me. This is about all of us. And I want that to be, because so many other, what I've realized, a big thing that I realized is that so many little people have the same experience. They just might not know it. And
Yeah.
and so and it's kind of like, what you brought up earlier about seeing another artist trying to do their thing, or that when they are doing their thing. I think there's a community there that's really important when you see someone else and you can identify with someone else and realize that you're not alone, whether it is art or it's discrimination or something that you're
Right. Shared misery.
striving
Yeah.
for.
Sure.
I think in all of us, when we want to strive for something, it's helpful, I think, to see other folks that are supporting or having a similar experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And then in that though, I'm curious, like, is one of the things I thought was really interesting in your podcast, you talked about early in your life, you didn't really want to associate with other little people, or
Yeah.
not associate, but you wouldn't like seek them out or
No, I didn't want to
approach if they
associate. I
walked
mean,
in.
no, I didn't want to. And that's just kind of like a common thing, and it's still something that I have to work on.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think the podcast really, I'm so happy I did the podcast. I'm bummed that the podcast is on hiatus. But it really changed a lot for me, especially doing it during the pandemic, or at the beginning of the pandemic. That was a really big thing that I could focus on, and I could create, and I could, reflect on how things were for myself and for other people too. And I really kind of did some soul searching and realized that I just
Yeah.
denied myself, and I probably hated myself and didn't know that it was hate.
Right.
That's the thing. It kind of it's hate disguised as doing cool things. Like it's hate disguised as having to own all the brand name clothes, or having great hair or being the best drummer or being the best photographer or the best surfer, like, or having all of these possessions. Like I identify that for myself as self-hatred or self-denial. And I'm still not there, like I still have to work at.
Yeah.
I'm not like I was 4 or 5 years ago, but it's a process, man. Like I'm in my mid 40s, like change is not easy.
Yeah. Like you pointed, it's not linear either. It's not like, oh, I figured it out.
No, I mean, healing and it's kind of like some healing and some grief, that you have to come over, and it's not linear at all, and it comes as it comes.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved seeing the clip of you on Jimmy Kimmel. It felt like a fun nexus of a lot of your.
Wait, which one? The
I
drumming
saw the
one?
drum one, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that one, that's the best band I've ever played with in my life. I mean,
No way.
those players, those players are the best players I've ever sat down with ever. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jimmy Earl and Cleto Jr. and Senior. I mean, everyone is so good and so accomplished. I mean, I was so nervous. Just like not even like I've played on TV before. I've played to nobody, which is nerve-wracking. I've played to tens of thousands of people, that's actually not so nerve-wracking. It's okay. But like we didn't really rehearse, They were like they didn't tell me the song until like the night before, and I'm like, I went to my drum room and I just practiced for 2 hours, and I'm like, well, here we go. Seated the
Did you
pants.
sleep at all?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I knew I had to sleep, otherwise I was going to be dead. Because like, dude,
I'd be too nervous.
I had to act on that show, and then I had to go play drums, and it was something for sure. But yeah, I mean, those guys not only are they just so sweet and easy to play with, just so easy, like they're like, you sound great, man, you sound amazing, like it's so cool, you're doing this. It's like so nice, so kind, but just like cream of the crop, man. It does not get better than those dudes.
Yeah. It's just fun to see, like, you never know like what road life's going to push you down, but it's fun to see all those experiences you had did work out into something. Like they added to some skill set that you were able to leverage, and that was fun to see.
Yeah, thank you, man. I'm grateful you checked that out, because that was like that's the cherry on top of the musical, musical journey for sure.
Speaking of musicals, like the other part I was super excited to see you in was the Deadpool 2 musical.
Oh yeah.
I know you don't get starstruck, so like maybe Ryan Reynolds didn't starstruck you, but do you get superhero struck? Like, are you nerdy at all about that comic book stuff?
So I'm not nerdy about it. No, it's all kind of like somewhat lost on me, I guess, unfortunately.
Oh no.
But that actually wasn't Ryan Reynolds.
No way.
Yeah, they had I think they at least had 2 players, but I mean, like he sounded so good, right? Like it's
the physicality of it looked just like it.
I know that whole team, so talented and so amazing. That they're just they're all stunt performers that put that on, and the director's a stunt person. Like they're all stunt folks, and they just love the superhero, all the superhero stuff, and they wanted to make a snarky compilation, and that was really, really fun. That was cool.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool thing to be involved in.
Yep. I still have to meet Ryan Reynolds at some point, but that wasn't him.
Breaking all my fantasies with
I know,
this phone
sorry,
call. No
man.
rock stars,
I know.
no movie stars.
Sorry, kid.
How about A Million Ways to Die in the West?
Yeah, that one, that was just kind of like, that was just a background role, honestly. That was kind of like a quick in and out. It was at a point where I was when did I shoot that? I think that was maybe 2014 or something like that. Anyway, but yeah, that I was living in Michigan at the time, and I was like, it's time to move back to California. And then I booked that and I flew out for it, and I was like, yeah, I got to go back to California. So it was a nice it was a fun time. They took really nice care of us, even though it was a background role. I mean, for little people, productions usually take better care of us than other, just we're more of like a specialty background thing, but also, you know, some of us have lesser ability when it comes to mobility, and so it's really good of productions to take care of us. But yeah, that was fun. Like
Yeah.
they put me in a cool cowboy outfit. I have a photo of that outfit like somewhere on a computer somewhere. And the other fun part was they pulled a couple folks, friends of mine from Michigan. So we traveled together, and my buddy Bernie and I, we were hanging out and in New Mexico doing that. So yeah, it was a cool. I think we were there like 4 days.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, I'm gonna lay out a few scenarios. Let me know which one gets you the most nervous.
Okay.
So you have the corporate speech in
Hmm.
front of a big audience, playing in front of a big audience, playing in front of no audience or small audience, and then let's see, like maybe like another studio, like a Jimmy Kimmel type. Like which of these do you get nervous for now?
The most nervous. It depends on what the corporate speech is about, because my last presentation was for the University of Michigan, and I was so nervous ahead of time writing it, and I was thinking, is this going to be too long? Is it too short? Am
Yeah,
I going to just like forget 20 minutes of it? And then I got up there and I was like, I didn't even sweat. It was like, this is easy. So it depends on what I'm talking about
interesting.
and how well because I don't know, I can talk, but yeah, I think maybe like if I were to play drums with another studio, like a Jimmy Kimmel thing, that would be nervous. The drumming thing is probably the most nervous thing right now, because if I have to do it tomorrow, I'm not practiced up for it. And that's the biggest thing.
Yeah,
The drums are rusty at the moment, and so that's why. But I think it would come up. I wouldn't be so nervous.
yeah, that's interesting. I would think the corporate speeches would make you the most nervous. Like for me, being yourself can make you nervous, but if you're pretending or leveraging someone else's music, or
You might be
I don't
right,
know.
man. Again, like it depends on what if it was something that I'm used to presenting about, I'm pretty good with that. And I don't have a problem, getting vulnerable or trying to connect with folks. If the corporate speech is like a dead room,
Yeah,
that's
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 tough.
that's tough, because if no one is looking at you, if there's like I'm super sensitive to like phone engagement. If somebody I'm talking to is like on their phone,
Oh yeah.
I'm like, ugh, I hate this.
Oh yeah. Do you do that one thing where like if one person in the room is doing that,
Just stare at
you
them.
stay
I
off?
call I call them out. I'm like, hey, table 16, you with the hat.
That's awesome.
I totally like roast them like a comedian, like call them out.
That's awesome. Could you talk to me about how you got involved with surfing? I can't imagine a lot of people from Detroit are too into
Oh man.
coastal sports.
Obsession, man. Like I've been obsessed. Well, okay, so we have the lakes in Michigan, and we would go to the lakes. And when I was growing up, 2, 3, 4, up until I was a teenager and beyond, and I always just loved water. I always loved the water. And my mom would take me to Florida for Easter, and we would always go to the Gulf side. So they have surf shops on the Gulf side. So I got to see photos of surfers, and they also kind of like, uh, cross cross market, like surfing, skateboarding, snowboarding is all ends up in the same magazine.
Yep.
And so I would see surfing, and because I loved water so much, I was like, God, that's so cool. I wonder if I could do that. And so I finally begged my mom to one year go to Cocoa Beach on the other side of Florida, because there are no waves on the Gulf side, there's waves on
The
the ocean
Atlantic
side.
side. Yeah.
And yeah, so I didn't take a lesson. I just rented a board that was way too small. I probably rented like a 6-foot board, which is insane to start out on. Never going to catch anything. And I just plopped myself in the ocean, paddled out there on my own. I didn't know what I was doing. Like there
No
was
instructor.
no instructor. One of my first sessions, I think I paddled out by some other surfers. One of the very first sessions, I paddled out. I think there was maybe a surfer there, and then I couldn't catch anything, and I got caught in a rip current, and I just like one that was going parallel to the beach, and it just took me a quarter of a mile down the beach, and I was swimming as hard as I could. I was trying to touch the bottom. I couldn't touch the bottom. I finally got in. Somebody told me that in that area there are jagged rocks far enough down. If I would have touched a jagged rock, I would have been scared. I would have been so freaked out.
Yeah.
But I got in. My mom was freaked out. She like walked all the way down the beach to find me. I was like, I want to do it again. I want to try and catch a wave. I got to try and catch a wave. Yeah, I don't know, man.
Dude, that's such a perfect parallel to like every story you've told so far in the podcast where you're like, I didn't have an instructor. It didn't go like I thought it would, but
yeah,
darn it, I'm gonna do it again.
Yo,
like,
yeah,
that's
the
awesome.
stubbornness is alive and well, man. I just try to like direct it in a way that like furthers me instead of like holds me back. But I think that that's also the same thing of like, see, I didn't have a spinal fusion at that time. And I'd only had one leg surgery. So I was still, it's still that thing of like, let's push me. Let's see what I can do. Let's see what else is there. And yeah, it can be, it's definitely scary at times, but for me, I have to try it.
Yeah. And like you even get involved in stunt work, right?
The stunt work, I kind of wanted to be really good at stunts, and at one point I was like, yeah, I want to be, called for stunt stuff, but that didn't last all that long because with the spinal fusion and, I have seen accidents with stunt people. I've heard stories.
Yeah.
My neck is, a weak point per se. And I'm not down with like having work be the last thing I do. I want to, so
it's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. It's not, stunting pays. It's a principal role on a production. So it can pay thousands and thousands of dollars, but I kind of came to terms with the fact that I want to be able to do the stuff that I want to do. And if there's an accident, I don't want to, interrupt that or that's too risky.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Will you humor me for a few quick fire questions?
Yeah, of course, man. I love it.
Is there a movie that's out now that you'd most want to be an actor in?
A movie that's out now?
Or any movie you've enjoyed, like, oh, it would have been fun to be an actor in this movie.
Like, are you asking what sorry to ask a follow-up to your rapid fire question. Are you asking like, do I wish I could have played a role, or do you wish I could be like inserted in as an actor in the film?
Let's go inserted.
Okay. And I just watched Ocean's 11 again.
So good.
It's such a good movie. Holy cow, man. I think it would be really fun to have had a role on Ocean's 11. Yeah, for sure.
That's a really good pick.
Yeah.
Same question for band. If there's a band you could play in?
Oh my God. I mean, there's probably so many. I only one I can pick.
You can do a few if you want.
Off the top of my head, it would be My Morning Jacket. Like, I think they're really, really fun, and I think they're great writers and great groove artists. And then he's not with us anymore, but like, I love soul music.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, Charles Bradley would be amazing. His stuff is like, he's so talented, and his band, I think he plays with like Daptone players, the Daptone Records label. Anybody on the Daptones label or that plays with them, like, that music is so funky, and it's really fun to play, especially at a high level. When you're at a high level and you're playing that stuff is amazing.
Yeah, I'll have to check them out. I don't know that last band.
Yeah, check out Charles Bradley. He's amazing, soulful singer. Kind of didn't get started until he didn't get like really, really good. He used to impersonate James Brown.
New Orleans?
I have been, yeah.
Okay, you must love that city.
I haven't really had the chance to. I've been there for gigs, so I haven't really been able to just
Mm.
explore New Orleans. But I would love to. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I've only been once, but I just casually enjoy music. But even I was pretty blown away with the
Yeah,
level of talent there.
it's incredible, man. I feel like New York City and New Orleans have a unique musical energy that really kind of isn't anywhere else.
Yeah, totally. Last question is, what's the best way for people to follow and support you?
Oh, you can check out Instagram. It's Christophe ZD.
Or
Yeah.
I'll plug it.
Yeah, Christophe
Yeah,
ZD on Instagram. There's also Big Deal Pod on Instagram. Unfortunately, I'm not really as active on there, but
but it's
and
evergreen. I'd recommend listening to it.
I really appreciate that. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, I mean, the guests are incredible people, and their stories that you might not ever hear anywhere else.
yeah, yeah. I agree. Well, thanks so
Hmm.
much, Christoph. It was really great getting to chat with you.
Kip, this was an honor. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Huge thank you to Christoph. Thanks so much for joining the podcast, and thank you for listening. Hit like, subscribe, follow, comment, 5 stars, all the buttons to make sure you stay tuned for the next episode.